For more, let's go to New York City and Eric Trager, fellow at the Washington Institute, the author of Arab Fall, How the Muslim Brotherhood Won and Lost Egypt in 891 Days. Thank you for being with us here on France 24.
Good to be with you, Francois.
It's been years since we've seen an attack like this against the Coptic community. Why now?
Well, I mean, unfortunately, it hasn't been years. Of course, there was an attack on a major church in Cairo in December. And I think that this uptick in attacks on Christians, including the attacks on Christian families in northern Sinai that basically that forced at least 100 families to flee to Ismailia, reflects a change in ISIS's strategy in Egypt. Now, the ISIS leadership based in Sinai was decapitated last summer, but a new leadership has emerged, which appears to be much more intimately linked to the leadership in Raqqa, Syria, the base of ISIS. And so we're seeing an uptick in attacks on civilians and an uptick in attacks on Christians in particular, because ISIS's strategy, obviously in Syria and Iraq, but now in Egypt, is to drive a sectarian wedge into the society, thinking that by attacking religious minorities, it can stir anger against those minorities and win popular support.
You say a new leadership that's closer to the ISIS that's in Raqqa. What are the tangible signs of that?
Tangible signs of that is, first of all, U.S. government officials are just seeing an uptick in that kind of communication. Secondly, the professionalization of media, and third, the just improved capability of these attacks, and the fact that now ISIS is not just focused on attacking security forces and not just focused on attacks within the Sinai, but is really reaching deeper and deeper over the Suez Canal into what I guess we could call mainland Egypt. And so there's just a professionalization of the media, of the attacks, but also, according to government officials, just an uptick in communication.
Because in Egypt, there's a long running history of radicals, of course, dating back to the assassination of Sadat and beyond, the Jama Islamiyah group most notably. Is it a borrowing of the brand ISIS? Is it taking orders from Raqqa? What is it?
Look, I mean, the government officials that follow this most closely say that it is an improved communication, and that you also have really a new leadership that is more ideologically aligned with ISIS in Raqqa, not just, as you sort of said, using the brand name. So that's the change here, and that's why we're seeing this special focus, this really horrific focus on Egyptian Christians these last few months.
Now, you've penned a piece where you criticize the government of President Sisi for basically having a conventional warfare response to what should be a counterinsurgency strategy. How do you fight these insurgents?
Well, what the Egyptian military has done is gone into the Sinai heavy. The estimates of how big ISIS in the Sinai are basically 1,000 to 1,500 members. There are even some estimates that put ISIS's membership in the Sinai as low as 600. And yet the Egyptian military has lost, and I'm very sorry to say this, 2,000 soldiers, according to government estimates, in these past 4 years since it started its operation in September 2013. And what you also have in recent months is the expansion of repression within the Sinai that's alienating very prominent local Bedouin families. And what a counterinsurgency strategy would do, by contrast, is it would first work on securing the civilian population and then mobilizing that population to identify terrorists and improve intelligence gathering and improve targeting. And that's just not what the Egyptian military is doing. And that's because the Egyptian military is really structured for fighting the conventional wars of a previous era, during which it was going up against conventional militaries, obviously the Israeli military in particular. It hasn't made that transition because economically, the Egyptian military is really structured around having big weapon systems, maintaining big weapon systems, and thereby justifying their large standing army, using these big weapon systems to enhance their employment, enhance their reach into Egyptian society, but also to kind of keep top officers happy. And so that transition from a conventional doctrine to a counterinsurgency doctrine would mean a smaller military without the same types of big weapon systems. Not to say that Egypt would get rid of its fighter jets or anything like that, but just a transition towards a military that can move more quickly and lightly and is more dependent on intel technologies. And that would, yeah.
I was just going to ask you, because we're running short on time. Graduating to the rest of Egypt, we've seen a heavy crackdown, of course, on the Muslim Brotherhood since President Morsi was ousted. Is now the time to have a different tack when it comes to more moderate Islamists?
Look, I mean, I would not connect the repressive situation in the rest of Egypt to what's happening in the Sinai. Sinai is a different environment, a different battle environment for this government. So I don't personally see the connection between the crackdown on the Muslim Brotherhood and ISIS, which by all reports, all credible reports, is not actually connected to the Brotherhood or the crackdown on the Brotherhood. I do not believe, for example, that a more inclusive Egyptian government would change the situation in the Sinai, because the ISIS militants, the ISIS terrorists in the Sinai would not otherwise prefer to serve in a parliament. It's just a very different type of threat. And I really think that it's incumbent that Western governments work with the Egyptian government and try to help it get this fight right, because if Egypt loses in the Sinai, that has ramifications for ISIS's strength everywhere.
Eric Trager of the Washington Institute, many thanks for speaking with us.